Truex Jr. will not run the 2025 Daytona 500 with 23XI Racing, but still plans to run the Daytona 500, and Denny Hamlin will have a new crew chief for 2025. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got some NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just show them straight really quickly. We're going to start by talking about Roto-Rooter. Now, this is posted on the NASCAR Reddit page, I believe a couple days ago on Friday, if I'm not mistaken. And it looks like that Roto-Rooter might be sponsoring Michael McDowell in 2025. If they do sponsor McDowell, this will be, I believe, the first time that Roto-Rooter has sponsored a Cup Series driver. Now, they do have association with Junior Motorsports. I think they're going to be sponsoring Conor Jones once again in 2025, and I think they're going to sponsor some other drivers at that program next year. But this is a really big pickup for Michael McDowell. We don't know the other sponsors currently at the moment that are going to work on Michael McDowell for 2025, but it looks like Roto-Rooter is going to be joining Spire Motorsports for the first time, a new sponsor for the company. Glad to see that Roto-Rooter will be joining the Spire Motorsports group, most likely in 2025. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Michael Strahan. As it was announced earlier today that Michael Strahan will be the pace car driver for the 2025 Indianapolis 500. Michael Strahan, for those who don't know, is an NFL Hall of Famer, playing the NFL for many, many years, and also is a commentator on NFL on Fox during the pregame and during the halftime shows as well. He's part of this because, of course, Fox will be having the Indy 500 for the first time ever. They will be broadcasting the Indy 500, and they're bringing a lot of the guns, and they are doing a ton of promotion. They also revealed Will Power's 2025 Verizon livery, which I gotta say looks really, really strong and looks really, really good. I love the changes they've done for that. But having Michael Strahan, one of the big personalities on the NFL Fox coverage, is really, really huge for them as a whole. So it's great to see they're doing this, and again, pretty awesome and great to see that Michael Strahan will be the pace car driver for the 2025 Indy 500. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Brad Gilly. As it was announced on Friday afternoon that Brad Gilly will be joining PRN broadcast booth in 2025 along with Mark Garrow. Brad Gilly will be replacing Doug Rice, who has retired from basically being the lead commentator for the PRN broadcast. Brad Gilly has been with PRN for many, many years and will move up from being a pit reporter like he's been for a long time, now moves up to the broadcast booth. This is a really good replacement for Doug Rice. Brad Gilly's been doing this for many, many years, and I think he's earned the right and the opportunity to get promoted to work with PRN on the booth side of things. He needed someone that was going to do what Doug Rice has done, because Doug Rice has done an absolutely amazing job for many, many years, one of the best broadcasters we've ever seen, and now it's really good to bring in someone who's going to replace him, who I think is really, really good, but they're going in-house. I'm glad to see that Brad Gilly will be in the PRN broadcast booth as a lead commentator, most likely. Really glad they're making a decision, because I do think, truthfully, it is the right decision to make, in my opinion. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about IMSA. As it was reported by Adam Stern, I believe on Saturday or Friday, the IMSA now has more YouTube subscribers than IndyCar and has about half the subscribers on their YouTube channel than NASCAR currently has at the moment. They're about halfway to NASCAR's numbers. I believe NASCAR's YouTube channel has, I believe, about 500,000 or close to a million subs on YouTube, while IMSA's channel has a couple 100,000 subs. But going back to the promotion side of things, IMSA is growing. They got new manufacturers coming in. They've got like 19 or 20 different manufacturers. They're looking to make some big moves and expansion, among other things. And a lot of people are becoming fans of IMSA because the racing in IMSA is generally really, really fun to watch. And a lot of great drivers do go over and race in IMSA. But the other big thing is promotion. The promotion is a major thing for me. One of the things that IndyCars really struggle with is their promotion. That's been one of the areas they've generally been lacking, and they really need to work on that if they're going to succeed long term. You can rely on your drivers for so long, but they've got to do some promotion. When you need to say, oh, like Pat O'Ward isn't popular, which isn't true. Pat O'Ward is the most popular IndyCar driver, and is really the only IndyCar driver that might be moving the needle currently at the moment, and not your current champion, Alex Palou. But when they go and do other sports, they tend to become more popular. I mean, when Kyle Larson ran the Indy 500, he was the most popular driver and doesn't run IndyCar full-time, which says a lot about Kyle Larson, how great of a driver he is. But when I look at this move, they need to be doing a lot better job if you're IndyCar, because you can't just be falling behind IMSA. You need to be looking to grow. Formula One is doing better to you in that area in respect, and I think there's a lot of things they really need to work on in the IndyCar world, and one thing that desperately needs to get worked on when it comes to IndyCar is their promotion, because they struggle with that on a year-by-year basis. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Las Vegas Grand Prix. Now, last night, the Las Vegas Grand Prix took place, of course, on the streets of Las Vegas. This race had some very compelling things happen. Early in the race, we had a really good battle up front between Charles Leclerc and George Russell. And then, of course, Carlos Sainz was also very strong early in the race as well. And one of the big things that were talked about was the championship battle, because it could have been clinched last night. And, of course, the race between George Russell and then eventually Lewis Hamilton. Now, multiple drivers had issues on the start. Oscar Piastri got a penalty early, and a couple drivers fell out of the race, including Pierre Gasly, and I believe Alex Albon fell out of the race as well. Eventually, though, George Russell built up to such a big lead that, unfortunately, Lewis Hamilton could not get to him at the end. And coming off the final corner, George Russell would pick up his first win of 2024. Technically, second if you talk about the race at Spa, where he probably should have won. Obviously, got disqualified there. But he ends up getting the win and didn't get a takeaway this time. Also, because Max Verstappen finished ahead of Lando Norris, he has won his fourth straight Formula One championship and becomes a four-time Formula One champion. Congratulations to Max Verstappen, the most deserving driver, in my opinion, to win the title. Yes, Lando Norris was putting up the numbers at the end of the year, but Lando was so far behind at the beginning, and Max had done his damage in the early portion of the season that there really was going to be no chance and opportunity unless Max completely collapsed in the final three races that he was going to get there. So massive congratulations to Max, but I do think Lando Norris is going to be a favorite for the championship. I would not be shocked or surprised if you see Max not go 5 in a row this time around, and we see Lando win that championship. I think there's a really good chance that it could get done. But nonetheless, well-deserved for Max Verstappen, a 4-time champion, did it throughout the year. Really happy for him, and so great to see it. Congratulations, like I said, to Max Verstappen on winning the championship. Absolutely well-deserved. Congratulations to him on winning the championship. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Titan Risk Solutions. Now, a couple days ago on Friday, Titan Risk Solutions was putting out a little bit of a teaser announcement surrounding Richard Childress Racing that announced that they'll be coming later this morning around 10 a.m. Eastern, probably by the time most of you are watching this. Now, what could this announcement be? Well, this could be a new sponsor or another sponsorship announcement with RCR. I do believe that Titan Risk Solutions actually sponsored RCR in 2024 at the Brickyard 400 for Ty Dillon. And there's been a lot of chatter that RCR could be running a third car at some point in 2025, but we do not know the number of races at this time that they are going to run. It's been rumored that Austin Hill could potentially be part of this program in the Cup Series. We do think Jesse Love could be making his Cup Series debut at some point in 2025, and there is a chance that Chandler Smith, who hasn't rumored to go into RCR over the last week or so, there is a chance that Chandler Smith could get an opportunity. I'd have to think this is for the Daytona 500. We do know this car is expected to run more races than it did in 2024. I do believe that Ty Dillon ran a start. Austin Hill made about 4 or 5 starts in this car. And even Will Brown, who's also been rumored, by the way, to be coming over to this, I do think that he will probably make a start at some point in this car in 2025. But I certainly think it's going to be very interesting to see what drivers end up getting into this car for next year, because I do think they're going to have to find the right drivers to get behind the wheel, and I really hope whoever they decide to choose for this car makes a lot of sense. It would make a lot of sense for Austin Hill and Jesse Love to be the two main guys they go with. The announcement will come out later this morning, and we'll see which drivers they decide to go with to get behind the wheel of this seat, and we'll see who they decide to put behind the wheel of the Titan Risk Solutions Chevrolet in 2025. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Most Popular Driver Award. Now, every single year, there's always the Most Popular Driver Award, and it's probably the most coveted award around the award show. And everyone thought there would be a chance we'd have a new Most Popular Driver Award winner in the NASCAR Cup Series. Sadly, that is not the case this time around. For the Cup Series, Chase Elliott, for the 7th year in a row, has won the Most Popular Driver Award. For the NASCAR Xfinity Series, Justin Allgaier, once again, for like the 5th or 6th year in a row, has won the Most Popular Driver Award. And for the Truck Series, Roger Cruft has won the Most Popular Driver. Let's go to the 2 or lower series. Roger Cruft doesn't shock me. His win in Las Vegas was extremely popular in the industry and garage. He's always out there trying to grow the sport and help it. Roger well-deserved to win the Truck Series one. I know that Christian Eckes and Corey Heim had a shot to get it done, but I think Roger Cruft deserves it. He's done a lot for the Truck Series, and he's been trying to help help it grow, and I think he's done good stuff there. Justin Allgaier winning in Xfinity. I'm definitely a little bit shocked to see Shane Van Gisbergen not win this one, but at the same time, when you're driving for Dale Jr. in Junior Motorsports, you're likely going to win the award no matter what, so I really have no issue with this. I'd have to think Shane Van Gisbergen was second. Had Hailie Deegan, of course, finished the whole entire season, she probably would have been up there contending because she's still very popular, but Justin Allgaier, I think, definitely deserves it. For Cup, once again, Chase Elliott winning. Not surprising. Now, when it comes to the top 3 vote getters, it was Chase Elliott number 1, Kyle Larson number 2, and Ryan Blaney number 3. I do think that gap is closing very slightly, however. I think Kyle Larson, when you look at popularity, Larson is catching up to Chase Elliott. And unlike Chase Elliott, no offense to Chase, Kyle Larson is trying to help and grow the sport in big ways. If we could continue to see Kyle Larson help him to grow the sport, especially in the dirt realm, especially of how popular he is, you go to Kyle Larson and see anything. He's got promotions at Prime with KSI and Logan Paul, among other things. I definitely would have thought there had been a chance and opportunity for maybe Kyle Larson, even Kyle Busch to get it done. Not Bubba Wallace wasn't in the top 5, but I think that it's not something that shocks me or surprised me. It does make sense why Chase Elliott won the one. It's basically been the Elliott and Earnhardt families that have won the most popular driver award for the last 40, 50 years combined. I would love to see some new people get the opportunity to win it, but at the same time, I'm really not shocked and surprised to see this. I'm not, again, very shocked and surprised to see that they continue to win the most popular driver award. It's not the most surprising thing, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Dale Jr. Now, one of the big things that happened this past weekend at Florence for the South Carolina 400 at Florence Speedway was the return of the A Budweiser Chevrolet. The number 8 car returned to racetrack for the first time. Now, Dale Jr. did not qualify very, very well. He actually qualified 45th out of, I believe, of 48 cars that did enter the event, but because Dale Jr. got to promoters provisional, he was able to race in the main event. He started back basically in last place, but he drove his way up to the front, and that number 8 car was absolutely charging his way up to the front, and we all thought that Dale Jr. was going to have a chance and opportunity to win. He was running up to second with about 50 laps to go in the race, and then with around 30 laps to go, he had fuel pump issues. Dale Jr. unfortunately fell out of the race with around 40 laps to go, and his night would come to an end. Instead of having a chance to win the event, he would finish in 28th position. It's a shame to see the 8 car not go to victory lane. I really hope we see the 8 car once again. I know Dale Jr. did say during some of the media stuff this past weekend that we might see the number 8 car return at some point. He'll probably talk about that on the Dale Jr. download later today because I think he's doing a little bit of a podcast about that from the race at Florence. It was really good to see the number 8 car win, or not win, but run really good. But Trey Lapsevich, congratulations to him. I really hope that guy gets a chance and opportunity in the future with a really good team. As for the stream itself, terrible streaming from Flow Racing. I think it was an infrastructure issue, unfortunately. I'm not going to put all the blame on Flow Racing here. They've been usually top quality. I think Florence did have some infrastructure issues. I know a lot of people are blaming Flow Racing for that, and I do think Flow Racing probably should have definitely been a little bit more prepared for that. But I think at the same time, it's been very rare where Flow Racing's had these issues, and I think that this is something that they're going to look to resolve. I do appreciate them, not Flow Racing, but I appreciate the track and even people involved apologizing like Eric Brennan. I do think Flow should have put out a statement in regards to that. I do think the number of subscriptions on Flow are going to go down because of what happened, which is a shame because I truly do think that Flow Racing generally does a really good product, so it's just a shame to see how things kind of got handled there. But at the same time, I'm also not surprised to see some issues come up, especially with Dale Jr. being there. The infrastructure was a big problem, and I think it's something they're going to have to fix going forward if they're going to host events in the not-so-distant future. I really hope they can resolve this and figure it out soon because they've got a lot of things they do definitely need to work on going forward into the future. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Brad Keselowski. Now, over the weekend on Friday, Brad Keselowski was speaking to media on many things, including Jeremy Bowens being the new crew chief for Brad in 2025. But one thing that got brought up was the playoff format once again. One of the biggest overarching conversations that has been going around in the industry has been topic and talking conversations surrounding the playoff system because Joey Logano, despite the fact he had a 17.19 average finish, he still went on to win the championship in 2024, despite the fact he was one of the more mediocre drivers throughout the whole entire season. Now, Brad Keselowski spoke on this playoff format. He actually said this on Twitter after Martinsville, that we should abolish the playoffs altogether and basically make some changes to the playoffs. Brad said that he would love to go back to more of a traditional thing when it comes to the playoff format, but he also says if we're going to have some sort of postseason, that we should put more emphasis on winning, but also consistency as well. I do agree that winning should definitely matter. I think when winning races, and he says that the winningest driver probably should be the one winning the championship. I can't completely agree with that for Brad, to be honest with you. I do understand where Brad is coming from. Believe me, I just don't think the winningest driver should be the one winning the championship personally. I think for me, winning should matter, and I think if you win a race, you should get more points, but I also think consistency has got to matter as well. We can't just reward winning as the most important thing. That shouldn't absolutely be the most valued thing. There should be a balance. When it comes to NASCAR, you can't just put absolute full focus on winning, which again, I understand that the goal should be to win races, because that's what you're getting paid to do, is go out and win races and win events. The most remembered drivers win a lot of races. But I feel like there needs to be consistency involved as well. I think a perfect balance would be bringing the original chase format, or the 2007 format that they had, basically 10 races to decide a champion, and then of course you have winning more points for the winner, and you do get the stage points and the playoff points as well, and the more you get, the more of an emphasis you're going to have. So it will make winning matter so much more, but also consistency will be a big thing, because you have to be in the top 12 in the points the whole entire year. I think there have to be major changes to the playoff format itself, and I know NASCAR is in talks and discussions right now to make those changes. I really hope they do make the right decision and changes going forward, because the sport needs to get back to the point where it's growing. It hasn't really grown much. It's been kind of sitting in the same position for about 6 or 7 years at this point since Dale Jr. left. It's been just minimal growth, but it's not that major growth I think everyone's really looking for, and I really hope that we get that, because guys like Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, and Christopher Bell should have been competing for the title this year, and they did not compete for the championship. Again, don't hate the player. Don't hate Joey Logano. I'm going to make that clear. Joey Logano did what he had to do in the system, but I really think there've got to be changes to the system, because right now the system is not fully sustainable, and it's not the best system to crown a champion currently at the moment. Is it the worst NASCAR system? No. We had the money system back in the day, and I think there were definite issues with that, but I do think there's got to be some changes to the current system right now, because I think that the current system is not the best system to crown a champion, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Christopher Bell. As it was reported by Matt Weaver earlier this evening that Christopher Bell is interested in running the Indianapolis 500. However, it has to be due to the right circumstances for him to be able to run the Indy 500. Now, Christopher Bell, this is the first time I think we've heard him mention the possibility of running the Indianapolis 500. And we're starting to hear him open up a little bit more about wanting to do different things. Remember, about a week or so ago, reported this on the channel, I believe on Wednesday, that Joe Gibbs Racing is getting rid of the dirt ban, where the drivers that race at dirt, that drive for Joe Gibbs Racing, Christopher Bell, Chase Briscoe, and most likely Ty Gibbs, are going to be looking to do some more dirt racing going forward, though they haven't revealed their schedule officially yet for 2025, though I'd have to think Christopher Bell and Chase Briscoe are going to, of course, want to go ahead and run the Chili Bowl, which is about a month and a half away from now. I think that thing, he said, had to be under the right circumstances. I'd have to think that Joe Gibbs is probably saying no on drivers going and running open wheel, unless it's dirt racing, of course, because I know that Kyle Busch was very interested in running the Indy 500 back in 2017 and 2018 when Kyle Busch was at his peak, and Joe Gibbs basically denied that opportunity for Kyle Busch to go ahead and do it. And basically, unless your name is Ty Gibbs, you're not really going to move the needle to change things over at Joe Gibbs Racing. But I would love to see Christopher Bell, who is one of the most talented drivers in the field, get the chance and opportunity to go out and do some cross promotion and race in the Indy 500. Because I think that cross racing, going and running different motorsports, is really, really huge. It can help the sport grow as a whole. Look what Kyle Larson did for the Indy 500. The All-Star race went up massively in TV ratings. Same with the Indy 500 qualifying the final day. It went up in the TV ratings. IndyCar is probably going to go up because of Kyle Larson, but also because it's going to be on main Fox for the qualifying side of things. I think that Christopher Bell, I would love to see him run the Indy 500. It'd be really awesome and fun. Will it happen? I don't know at this point, to be honest with you. It probably will be at least a couple years, especially. I think once he gets a championship underway, which could happen in 2025, I then think there's a chance that maybe it could change Joe Gibbs' mind about that possibility. But I think as of right now, it's unknown if it's actually going to happen. I really would love to see it happen, where we do get to see him run the Indy 500 in the future. But again, it's all going to come down to the decision from Joe, because Joe's going to have the final say on what happens in regards to that. And I'm not sure if Joe is going to allow drivers like him and Chase Briscoe to run the Indy 500 in the future. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about IndyCar and a NASCAR doubleheader. Now, over the weekend during the awards banquet weekend, Roger Penske stressed he's had no conversations with NASCAR about an IndyCar-NASCAR doubleheader, but that is something that he'd like to see happen. Now, NASCAR and IndyCar have done doubleheaders before in the past. Back the Truck Series actually used to do the truck races at Texas Motor Speedway. IndyCar would also happen on that same weekend as well. And for a few years, from I believe 2021 to 2022, or at least in 2021, IndyCar and NASCAR had a doubleheader weekend. The IndyCar Series ran on the Indy GP. I believe it was like the Harvest GP in 2021. And I also believe in 2022 and 2023, they did that event as well. And one of the biggest issues that came up with it is the fact that the crowds did not stay the same. The fans that are fans of NASCAR are only going to stick around for NASCAR, while most fans of IndyCar are not going to stick around for NASCAR. There's not that cross promotion that really is going to grow. You need to have both series be able to work together efficiently for this doubleheader to work, and it really doesn't work because the crowds are completely different. However, there are a lot of NASCAR fans who are also IndyCar fans, like myself. I do a lot of IndyCar coverage on this channel because that's one of my biggest sellers for my channel, is I do have a lot of people that tune into that. And I would love to see more IndyCar, NASCAR doubleheaders in the future. And with Roger Penske being owner in the NASCAR Cup Series, I think it's definitely easy for him to get that done. And I think it would help grow IndyCar too with that kind of doubleheader. There was talk about Long Beach being bought up by NASCAR, and that could have been huge for IndyCar too, even though now Penske owns completely rights to the Long Beach Grand Prix. I really would love to see a doubleheader, like maybe perhaps a Toronto in the future. Maybe one with Mexico City. That could certainly be a possibility, where you have the NASCAR Mexico City IndyCar race and the Cup race there happen in 2026, because I believe the Mexico City contract for NASCAR is through 2027. And IndyCar is in talks and conversations of going to the Autodromo Hernando Rodriguez track in 2026, I believe. And also, we do know for a fact as well that some drivers are interested in racing in NASCAR. Joseph Newgarden is, Alex Palou is, Pat O'Ward would like to run the NASCAR Mexico race with Project 91, potentially, perhaps. I think that certainly is something that could potentially be a possibility, and I would love to see cross-promotion like this going forward. Will IndyCar NASCAR doubleheader happen? I'm not entirely sure, but I think it'd be really awesome and really cool if something like that could happen, where we could see both series work together on that front. We'll have to wait and see what happens in regards to that in the future, but I really would love to see IndyCar NASCAR doubleheader maybe back in Indianapolis or a track like Long Beach in the future. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Conor Jones. Now, one thing that was kind of not talked about from the race at Florence for the South Carolina 400 is the fact that Conor Jones was another little bit of a controversial incident that took place about halfway through the South Carolina 400. On a restart on lap 85 or 86, there was a big wreck that was caused by Conor Jones. He would intentionally wreck Mason Diaz, where people that were at the racetrack were saying, and then after tried to fight Mason, was flipping him off, was being very controversial and causing a lot of controversy on the racetrack once again. And apparently, according to Mason, Mason had gotten into him, but he actually was letting him get his place back. As a fair gesture for getting into him, he wanted to give him the place back. Then basically under the caution, Conor was running in him under the caution flag. Once again, no surprise to see that Conor Jones is involved in another incident. This is not the first time I discuss things around Conor Jones. In fact, this is maybe the third time in the last month or so that we've seen Conor Jones in some sort of controversy. Going back to Homestead, he intentionally wrecked Matt Mills at 180 miles an hour going into turn number 3, threw a tantrum on the radio, and intentionally hooked Matt Mills into the outside wall, sending Matt Mills to the hospital for multiple days. Matt Mills then got cleared and got to race with no issues. And then what happened in Phoenix? He wrecked himself on the inside of Jake Garcia, spun himself out, And then after the race concluded, shout out to Brake Car for covering this, by the way, and I think the Bleacher Report account also covered this as well. It actually showed that he was causing incidents and controversy on his own as well. And now we've got this situation. This guy has a major anger management issue, and I said this on Twitter last night, and I'm going to say it here again. He needs a reality check really, really quickly. And I'm not sitting here calling for his license to be revoked. But at some point, someone has to say something to him, because at some point his racing career, if he doesn't clean this up really quickly, his racing career is going to come to an end. Mason Diaz said it best. Most people don't like this kid because of the way he races and his racing etiquette. A lot of people compare him to Carson Hocevar. And say what you want to say about Carson Hocevar, he actually has talent to back it up and got multiple victories in 2023 and won the Rookie of the Year honors and nearly finished in the top 20 in points in the Cup Series as a rookie. Conor Jones hasn't even scored a top 10 yet in the Craftsman Truck Series. He needs to get this cleaned up quickly and stop doing stupid crap and stop being entitled and stop racing like a douchebag, because otherwise your career is going to end really quickly, Conor. I want to see you get a chance to race, unlike your other Connor Zilic, who I think is a great driver, by the way. But you need to clean this up, because at some point your racing career is going to come to an end, and it's going to come to a close if he don't stop doing stupid stuff on the racetrack, and I think it won't be long before his career ends if he doesn't clean this up in the near future. And now we're going ahead to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about GM and Cadillac. As it was initially reported by Motorsports.com and many other F1 reporters in the industry that GM and Cadillac are close to making an official announcement that General Motors and Cadillac are officially going to be joining Formula One in 2026, not as a different team, but as a new team, meaning we'll have 11 teams in 2026. Now, the announcement has not officially happened at the time you're watching this, but there is a really good chance that by the end of this week that we will be getting an official announcement on GM and Cadillac joining the sport. There's been talk that they were going to come to Formula One a few years ago with the Andretti Global branding. However, Formula One and the people in Liberty Media completely initially denied the opportunity for this manufacturer and team to come into Formula One, because of Michael Andretti and also the Department of Justice getting involved as well. There's a couple reasons why I think this is finally going to happen. Number one, Greg Maffei stepping down from Liberty Media at the end of the year. Greg Maffei, from what Mario Andretti had told a lot of people, apparently he was told by Greg Maffei that they were going to deny him the opportunity and chance to come to Formula One. I think that a lot of people at Liberty Media have realized that basically Cadillac coming in, I think, is really, really important for the success of Formula One. Number two, Andretti, Michael Andretti himself no longer being the CEO, and Dan Townless taking over control. Them having no control of that, I think, played a major role in this as well. Now, some of the other details coming out with this is that for the first 2 years, in 2026 and 2027, they are going to use Ferrari engines. But then in 2028, they're going to have their own engine. So basically, it's going to be kind of like Haas. They're basically going to be getting engines there. I'm very happy to see that GM and Cadillac are finally going to be coming into Formula One, even though they got denied initially for the case to be, but we'll have more information on that. And again, I think it's good to see that we're finally going to be getting General Motors and Cadillac in the sport. And they should have gotten in sooner than they did, but I think it's good to see they're finally going to have the opportunity to come in 2026, and then by 2028, they'll have their own works. It's also really good for the American development system, because I think one issue that Formula One has is you don't really have an American development system. Now, you're going to have a potential to get a lot of young American drivers like a Colton Herta, Kyle Kirkwood, even a Kyle Larson or Conor Zilic, the opportunity to work with this program. So, really glad to see this finally getting resolved, and very happy to see that they officially are going to be joining Formula One in 2026. The announcement should be coming sometime this week. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the charter agreement. Now, over the weekend during the awards banquet, I believe it was Claire B. Lang who initially reported on this, but Brad Keselowski did confirm to the media this week something that's been rumored. It looks like that teams that are part of the charter agreement are only going to be allowed to have 3 full-time charter teams starting in 2025. There needs to be some confusion cleared up. There was a lot of people when they saw this tweet saying, so wait, they can only run 3 cars even if they're open. Well, Clarity Lane did talk to Bob Pockris and other NASCAR officials who work in the higher ups, and they did say that teams can run a 4th open car starting in 2025. So basically nothing is going to change except the limit, basically. What this means is that, and just to be clear as well, Joe Gibbs Racing and Hendrick Motorsports are going to get grandfathered in. So both those organizations are basically not going to be attempted to be kind of restricted on the amount of cars they're going to have at this time. Now, let's just say if Joe Gibbs Racing was to lose a driver like Denny Hamlin and they wanted to sell a charter, that could certainly be a possibility, and I could see Joe Gibbs Racing maybe downsizing their program in the future. Or if Hendrick Motorsports ever wanted to do that, I could see him doing it, but I don't think Hendrick Motorsports will be doing that at least for the near future at this time. So I don't think you'll be seeing drivers like Alex Bowman or Denny Hamlin or Kyle Larson, those guys, being in jeopardy of losing their seats. But that charter, if it was to go down, perhaps it would open up for more competition and more teams to show up. And hey, you're going to have more potential of having like new teams. We know Andretti Global is interested in coming to NASCAR. We do know that Honda is likely to be coming in potentially in the next couple of years. I do have a prediction that that's going to be coming down the road very, very soon. But having more open teams and having more cars in the field is better, and more teams showing up, I think, is good. Now, it's a shame to see that it's most likely going to come at the expense of going from 4 charter teams down to 3. But from what NASCAR is saying, and teams are saying too, 3 is the perfect number currently at the moment, which I don't disagree with, by the way. I think having 3 cars at the moment is a perfect number for a team. I think unless you're a team like Hendrick Motorsports or Joe Gibbs, which Joe Gibbs, by the way, struggled a little bit at the end of the year, I think this is a move that definitely makes a lot of sense for them. So I agree with the decision. I do agree with the move a little bit. I wish they weren't restricting him in a sense. I do wish teams could run 4 full-time charter teams, but at least there won't be the restriction on having like only 3 cars. They can't run a 4th open car, which I think is a good decision on that part. I would love to see it go back to 5 full-time entries for teams, but then again, you probably have Hendrick and Joe Gibbs basically flock it with all full-time drivers. So very interesting move nonetheless, and maybe this could open up the opportunity for Junior Motorsports in the future to maybe get a charter. That would be really cool if that could end up happening, but it probably won't happen, at least for now. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Greg Biffle. Now, the sport is something that kind of got overshadowed over the weekend, but Greg Biffle, I believe, was on a podcast with David Starr very recently. And Greg Biffle indicates and notes that he's very interested and wants to compete in another Daytona 500 in the not-so-distant future. However, he says it's very unlikely that it is going to take place in 2025, but he's not ruling out the possibility of doing it. And he also reiterates that he wants to do it with a really good team and organization. He doesn't want to do it with a team like NY Racing. He wants to do it with a very competitive and very, very fast team. Now, last time Greg Biffle competed in the NASCAR Cup Series was in 2022 for NY Racing. He actually had been talks and conversations to run the Daytona 500 in 2024, of course with NY Racing, but Greg Biffle has still not been paid by NY Racing at this time, which is why he did not compete for that team and organization. Now, keep this in mind. Let's say Greg Biffle decides and wants to run the Daytona 500 in 2025. He will be 55 years old. And let's say he doesn't do it in 2025 and wants to come back in 2026 and run the Daytona 500. He is going to be 56 years old. You don't have a lot of older drivers, especially nowadays, competing in the Daytona 500. It's not like back in the 50s or even the 80s and stuff where you had a lot of older veterans racing in the sport up until their 50s and 60s like AJ Foyt did back in the day. You're not really having that. So it's really cool to see that Greg Biffle still wants to compete. Just like I think we wish Carl Edwards would come back and maybe do a one-off like in the Daytona 500. Now, my big question is, if he wants to do it with a competitive team, what teams are out there's possibilities? Maybe RFK running a 4th car, perhaps. RFK, of course, is expanding to a 3-car operation in 2025. If Ryan Preece driving a number 60 car, that could certainly be a possibility for sure. But maybe Legacy Motor Club runs a car for him if he wants to do it with Toyota. I do know their program's not as good as Super Speedways, but Legacy, they're interested in running multiple different cars. But I would definitely love to see Greg Biffle get the chance and opportunity to run the Daytona 500 once again. I really think he would be very solid and very competitive behind the wheel of the car, even in his mid-50s. He's been doing a lot of great stuff, got the Myers Brothers Award very recently, and I would love to see a really good team pick him up. And if Trackhouse wanted to run Project 91 press, which it sounds like they're going to be doing in 2025, hey, why not pick up Greg Biffle to get that chance and opportunity? I think a lot of us would really, really love it. Now, is that fully going to happen? I don't know. But then again, they've seen a lot of crazy things happen, and not everything's out of the realm of possibility at this point. So I really hope that we get to see maybe in the future something like this come around where we do get to see the chance for Greg Biffle perhaps to compete in the Daytona 500 once again. Will it happen right now? I don't know if it's going to happen at least in 2025, but maybe in 2026 it does happen, and maybe we see Greg Biffle make a comeback to come back and race in the sport. I hope it does happen in the future, and I really hope we do get to see Greg Biffle maybe in the not-so-distant future once again, get the chance and opportunity to maybe, just maybe, run the Daytona 500 once again, and other old-time veterans get a chance maybe as well. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Project 91. Now, if you're on Instagram and social media earlier today, if you go down to basically Daniel Suarez's congratulations to Max Verstappen, you probably saw a little bit of a comment from Project 91 and Trackhouse Racing. It looks like there's a potential possibility that Project 91 is teasing something here. Now, they're basically saying, hey, Daniel, ask Max Verstappen about maybe doing something with us and get him the chance to run in the Project 91 car. And the Trackhouse Racing account absolutely agreed. Now, Max Verstappen is a fan of NASCAR, obviously, and many people have been wanting Max Verstappen to get the chance and opportunity to get back behind the wheel of the Project 91 car. And according to what's been reported by people like Justin Marks, it does sound like Project 91 is going to be coming back in some sort of capacity in 2025. They did not run Project 91 in 2024 because Shane Van Gisbergen, of course, was running part-time with Cadillac Racing. Had Shane Van not been running for Cadillac Racing and Cup, I guarantee you the number 91 car would have been the number they decided to go ahead and use for Shane in the races that he ended up running for Trackhouse Racing. Obviously, I look at some drivers who could get behind the wheel of the Project 91 entry, like a Conor Jones, who I think will make his Cup Series debut at some point in the 2025 season, but no confirmation on that at this time. But one driver that I think, like I said, many have been clamoring for to see is Max Verstappen. And Max Verstappen, in my opinion, coming over to NASCAR and racing against Kyle Larson, and remember Kyle Larson proclaimed that he's a better overall driver than Max Verstappen, getting those two on the track at the same time, I think would be really, really huge. Either shut the debate up or stop the debate as a whole. And I think that Max could be very, very competitive. If it's on a road course, I really think Max could be super, super competitive. Now, obviously, it would have to be when Formula One is not going on, and it would have to be open time for that to happen. And the problem for Formula One is they continue to close some of the gaps on the schedule, and I think the F1 schedule is even getting a little bit longer in 2025. So there's going to be less time to be off at this point. To me, though, I really, really love to see this where Max would get the chance and opportunity. Because, again, I do think Max Verstappen could be competitive if he got the time. Tony Stewart thinks he could. So I think that there's a chance that Max could be very, very competitive if he got the chance and opportunity to do that. But I think as of now, it probably won't happen in 2025. But I think we all kind of want it, right? We want to see Max Verstappen come into the NASCAR world and compete. We saw drivers in Formula One like Kimi Räikkönen get the chance, Jenson Button get the chance, Juan Montoya get the chance and have a pretty solid NASCAR career. I think it'd be pretty cool if it got to happen where Max got to race in the sport, and I think there would be a chance where Max could be pretty solid and pretty competitive if he got the right ride and right opportunity. We'll have to wait and see what happens, though, if he does officially decide to do it, but I think it's all going to depend on his Formula One schedule in the future. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're doing a little bit of a silly season update. Now, most NASCAR full-time Cup Series rides have been officially confirmed in the last couple of weeks. Ryan Preece, of course, got confirmed last week. They'll be driving number 60 car for RFK Racing in 2025. And Riley Herbst also got confirmed to be driving the 35 car for 2311 in 2025. But there are two full-time Cup Series seats for the 2025 season that have still not been officially confirmed at this time. One of those is the third Front Row Motorsports car. Now, currently Front Row and, of course, 2311 are in a lawsuit with NASCAR at this time. We have been hearing, though, Zane Smith is the current frontrunner to take the third full-time Front Row seat next year. However, there was a rumor that came out from NASCAR Rumor Nostalgia very recently that it does sound like there's an outside chance that they may not run a third full-time entry, and it might be part-time. And with the rides closing up for Zane Smith at this time, I'm not exactly sure if we'll get to see him get that chance and opportunity. But I still think it's pretty likely at this point that Zane is going to run with Front Row Motorsports. The question is, will it be full-time or part-time? That's a big thing to definitely watch out for. The other one is the Rick Ware Racing car. Now, Rick Ware is only going to have one full-time entry. They may have two full-time entries, but one of those might be charter, and the other one may be an unchartered car, because one of those charters from Rick Ware is going to RFK for that third seat. Now, what people are saying is there's two names that are mentioned as the favorites for the seat. Corey LaJoie and Cody Ware. Some think it's going to be Corey LaJoie getting behind the wheel, while others think it's going to be Cody Ware. And some have indicated, like multiple source accounts have indicated, I think Colby Evans said this, I think the Couch Racer account said this, they think that Cody Ware is a front runner to get the seat. As much as I think that Cody Ware has did okay this year at times, Corey LaJoie is a better driver overall, but again, Corey has said that he has opportunities outside of NASCAR to be in the sport still. So I do think even if he doesn't get to race next year full-time with like a good organization or a decent organization, I still think he'll be part of the sport. But the other one is a couple other things. One, the Force Spire car. There's a lot of talk that there is going to be a Force Spire car in 2025. Now, obviously, this car will be the development car for potential Chevrolet drivers, perhaps like guys in the Colic system like a Christian Eckes, potentially for Kaz Grala, who might be going to Spire. I think Roger Kroof will also get the chance and opportunity to make his Cup debut at some point in 2025, because I think Hendrick's going to be funding this ride. And I also do think that you might see Corey Day get the chance and opportunity in the future as well for this fourth car. It sounds like it's also, especially with the Hendrick Alliance, really growing going into next year. I think this is very, very likely. Next, the fourth 2311 car. Bob Pockrass does know that it sounds like the 2311 could run a fourth part-time entry in 2025. Most likely only for Corey Heim, though. Corey Heim is, of course, returning to Tricon Garage full-time in the 2025 season. And for Tricon, I think that, though, there's a chance we could see him get behind the wheel. And maybe if Kamui Kobayashi or maybe Eric Almirola wanted to ever run, we could see him get behind the wheel of this seat. And finally, RCR. We kind of talk about time risk solutions, but RCR is very likely going to run a third car at some point in the 2025 season. It's unclear who the drivers are officially. We do think that Austin Hill and, of course, Jesse Love might make his Cup Series debut. And then, of course, I do think there's a chance that Chandler Smith may head over to RCR in 2025, along with some other drivers like Will Brown getting the chance and opportunity. I do think there's some announcements coming, though, very, very soon that will clear a lot of things up. But most of the NASCAR Cup Series season is pretty much confirmed. A lot of the Xfinity season is pretty much set too. Truck still has a long way to go to confirm a lot of different rides, but I do think there's a lot of big things that will be playing out and a lot of dominoes that are still to fall here very, very soon that will clear a lot of things up, and we'll finally get a lot of confirmations on a ton of different things for the 2025 season, but there's still a few things that need to be officially announced and confirmed in the not-so-distant future. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about 2311 and Front Row Motorsports. Now, we did a video covering this on the channel a couple days ago, but it was reported by Bob Pockrass on Friday that 2311 and Front Row will refile for preliminary injunction in motion that's going to be able to seal a portion of it. They state plaintiffs intend to file a motion for preliminary injunction in the district court with additional evidence that they have received. Remember, we kind of talked about this on the channel a couple days ago, but 2311 and Front Row had dropped their appeal on the day they confirmed that Riley Herbst would be joining 2311 Racing in 2025 because they didn't have enough sufficient evidence even if they went to the appeal. Now, they're going to refile for that preliminary injunction. Basically, they're not going for a settlement. They're going to be looking to refile once again as this lawsuit continues to go on, as more information does continue to go out with the lawsuit. When I look at this, what they're trying to do is they're trying to basically say, hey, we've got new evidence to prove here, and we're going to come back with finances, and we're going to come back and prove with the open teams especially that we're going to lose a lot of money because they need this preliminary injunction, especially if Riley Herbst joining the team full-time now, because we do know that they're expected to still get the Stewart-Haas Racing charter at this time, though it still is not officially confirmed at this moment and at this point because they need that charter if they're likely going to keep Riley Herbst around long term because the Herbst family is funding that charter. I think about 2311 and Front Row. If they can prove the evidence and prove all the claims that they do have, I think they've got a really good chance to get their preliminary injunction granted. And even if they don't have the preliminary injunction, this is not going to be the end of the lawsuit going forward because they are going to still run as open teams. The question is, depending on how long the lawsuit goes through, right, that's going to be where things get a little bit tricky. Basically, what they're trying to now say, hey, we've got proof here, though, and we're not going to be playing the hypothetical game anymore, because one of the things that did hurt 2311 and Front Row in the original preliminary injunction case is the fact they were playing the hypothetical game, and that's not going to work with the judge, because you didn't come back with the actual burden of proof to show that we're going to lose a lot of money. They got to prove exact examples. They could have done that with showing JTG Doherty Racing when they were a two-car team, losing their charter to Spire Motorsports, and then running one full-time car in 2021 for Ryan Preece, and they had to shut that second car down for 2022, and Ryan Preece was out of a job. They can look at Live Fast Motorsports, for example, only being part-time too, or teams, of course, like MBM, who tried to purchase a charter but were denied the opportunity to get that said charter. But basically, one of the big positives we know is that the teams, of course, that got the charter agreement, they are getting a lot of that money. Now, obviously, for me, when it comes to 2311 and Front Row, in this case, I do think they've got a really good chance and opportunity to still win the case more than likely, and they could still win it in court. But also, I think NASCAR has provided some really good points as well. Again, I do expect the schedule on some of this stuff to come out really soon. I don't think the court case will happen till probably, at least for sure, after Thanksgiving, and probably not till the first couple weeks of December, probably before Christmas time comes around. And once we do get a basically official hearing on that within the next couple of weeks, we'll then know what the fixture for 2011 is. And they really need to know this and get this away, because they need to know if they're going to run the full season or not in 2025. But now we know they've got a preliminary injunction hearing, and they've got new evidence to show that they can go ahead and get that preliminary injunction officially set for 2025. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about 2311 racing once again. There were a couple very interesting things that came up during the media banquet before all the award ceremonies took place, revolving around Denny Hamlin and 2311 racing. Now, Denny Hamlin was getting asked a lot of questions about the crew chief change and also about the lawsuit. The first thing is that Denny Hamlin says there's nothing officially said when it comes to the Stewart-Haas Racing charter. Remember, 2311 and Front Row are expected to pick up the Stewart-Haas Racing charters for 2025. Or so we thought, because of course they're all both going to be expanding in 2025. We know it's officially confirmed this week that Riley Herbst will drive the 35 car for 2311 Racing full-time, with Devin Restivo being the crew chief. And meanwhile, you have Zane Smith, who's likely going to the third full-time Front Row seat, joining with teammates Todd Gillen and, of course, Noah Gragson. For 2311, you got Bubba Wallace and Tyler Reddick, who are both set at least for the long-term and the foreseeable future. Now, they are looking for that SHR money, and I know Tony Stewart's definitely frustrated when it comes to the charters, and he calls it a joke because Tony Stewart is still involved in the sport in a way, and Tony Stewart has basically said he really is not interested in being fully in the sport anymore and probably would like to get out and stop being involved in some way and focus on the family life. But I do think when it comes to the SHR charter, if they can find a way to get that charter purchased and still figured out, I don't think that'll affect 2311 in that respective way too. And I think that, and when it comes to the lawsuit, right, I think the purchases of that stuff is kind of being denied at this time, because NASCAR makes a decision when it comes to the purchase of these charts. They make the full decision in regards to that. So that's something to keep an eye on coming up soon as well. But the big thing that was kind of talked about, I felt like got a little bit overshadowed, is that 2311 Racing could potentially miss the Busch Light Clash in 2025, though they could also still run it as well. Now, why do I mention this? Well, 2311 Racing, they're currently on charter teams. Right now, only charter teams are only required to run the Busch Light Clash and also the All-Stars. If you're a charter organization like Hendrick Motorsports, Joe Gibbs Racing, Team Penske, Trackhouse Racing, if you win a race and your driver makes it, you are required to run the All-Star race and the All-Star event itself. Even if you don't make the main All-Star race, you still, like I said, are required to run the event. If you don't have a charter, guess what? You don't have to run the Busch Light Clash. So there is a chance and possibly we could see 2311 miss the Clash. Now, do I think that's 1,000% very unlikely at this time? To be honest, I don't fully know. I definitely think it is possible. There's no doubt about it, because they could definitely do it. But one reason why I don't think it's absolutely fully 100% accurate and certain that is going to happen is because of the fact that they could still go ahead and run it, because the Bowman Gray Stadium is not that far away. If it was happening in Los Angeles again in 2025, I think they definitely would miss it. But I think because of the fact that they are going to be running it at Bowman Gray, I still think it's pretty likely that it could definitely end up happening for sure. I really hope they don't miss the Clash because I want to see the drivers at that team, like Bubba Wallace and Tyler Reddick, get the chance there. Now, we still don't know the format, by the way, for Bowman Gray, and that probably will get announced here in the next couple weeks especially. But I do hope that 2311 doesn't miss the Clash at this point. And if so, do we see less cars show up, right? And do they miss other races? That's the other thing. We do know they're probably going to run the Daytona 500, but they're probably going to be open teams, though they're not going to have 4 cars for the Daytona 500, it sounds like, at this time. But I really hope that they do get this sorted out, and they do get to run the Clash. But again, I think there also is that outside chance and a good possibility, too, they may just go ahead and miss the Clash and focus on Daytona altogether because you don't really win and make money in the Clash, and there's not really major purse money in regards to that as well. So to me, I think for 20-11, again, there's certainly a chance and possibility they could definitely miss the Clash, but I also think there's a chance they will show up and decide to run it, and I think there's definitely a really good chance that you'll likely see them for sure run the Clash, even though I think there's outside chance it still could happen where they miss. I don't fully think they're going to miss the Clash in 2025. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the first of 2 major stories in today's episode as we're talking about Chris Gabehart and Chris Gale. As it was shockingly announced on Friday that Chris Gabehart will not be crew chiefing for Denny Hamlin in 2025. Instead, he will move to a different role at Joe Gibbs Racing in the 2025 season as he'll move from being a crew chief to being the competition director for Joe Gibbs Racing in 2025. Chris Gale, who has been the crew chief for Ty Gibbs over the course of the last 2 years, will be the crew chief for Denny Hamlin starting in 2025. And according to what Denny Hamlin had said during the awards media stuff this past weekend, he was not made aware of the situation until the night prior to making this decision. This has been a rumor that had been kind of going around over the course of the last couple days. There was some major bombshell, silly season move, or some crazy move that was about to take place. This is definitely really, really shocking to say the least. Denny Hamlin and Chris Gabehart have been working together for the last 6 or 7 years together. And since 2019, Denny Hamlin has emerged from being a really solid driver prior to being one of the best driver crew chief combination pairings we have seen over the course of the last 7 years. Denny Hamlin won like 6 or 7 races in 2019, won like 6 races in 2020, 2021 scored 2 victories, but was the most consistent driver, had the best average finish in the field, even better than Kyle Larson. 2022 was a down year, but he still scored 2 victories that season. In 2023, of course, he went on to win 3 or 4 races that year and was a championship contender. And in 2024, he scored 3 victories. However, Denny Hamlin's last win came at like race 11 or 12 of the season at Dover Motor Speedway. This is something really, really shocking to say because I think we all thought that Chris Gabehart and Denny Hamlin were going to work together very, very well. I am very worried for Denny Hamlin going into the 2025 season that Denny is going to struggle a little bit in performance because I think losing Chris Gabehart, who's been a major, major asset for this program over the course of the last couple of years, I think losing him for 2025 is definitely going to hurt Denny Hamlin, at least in a pretty big way, because these two have gelled together so well. And I do know that Chris Gale and Denny Hamlin worked together in Xfinity a couple times, and I think he's won with Chris Gale. But Chris Gale, in my opinion, this is no disrespect, I don't think Chris Gale is that good of a crew chief. He's an okay crew chief, at least for the Xfinity Series, but I don't think he's that good of a crew chief on the NASCAR Cup side of things. And I really don't think that Chris Gale is going to do an amazing job with Denny Hamlin in 2025. I do think Denny Hamlin will make the playoffs without question with Chris Gale, but I think losing Chris Gabehart, that's going to be a massive, massive loss for Denny Hamlin. But at the same time, I kind of understand what Joe Gibbs Racing is doing. They needed someone to go in the competition director role. This is something that really didn't get talked about until recently. But Joe Gibbs Racing just fell off near the end of this year. They won a lot of races early in the year. Christopher Bell scored 3 victories in the first 18 or 19 races. Denny Hamlin, the same thing. However, they have not won since June at New Hampshire Motor Speedway, which is like race 18 or 19 of the season. And Denny Hamlin and Christopher Bell failed to make the Final Four. Joe Gibbs Racing's made the Final Four, I think, every single year, basically over the last 10 years at this point. This is the first time they failed to make the Final Four. The last win for Joe Gibbs Racing, like I mentioned, came in New Hampshire. Christopher Bell was quick, but he didn't win a race. Same thing goes for Denny Hamlin, whose performance dipped a little bit. And then, of course, you think about how Martin Truex Jr. and Ty Gibbs, who we thought were going to have chances and opportunities to go to victory lane this year, Martin Truex Jr. and Ty Gibbs barely made the playoffs this season. So they had to do something and make some changes to make JGR better. I think Joe Gibbs Racing overhaul, I think, is going to have a better season. I think the team itself will be performing a lot better. But unfortunately for Denny Hamlin, I think his decline is going to start happening. And even at the age that Denny Hamlin is, even before this change happened, I really thought that Denny Hamlin was going to start falling off at least a little bit, because usually when drivers get up to that mid-40 range, they start declining in performance. And I think for Denny Hamlin, unfortunately, I do think Denny Hamlin is going to start declining in performance just a little bit going into the 2025 season. Again, I do think that Denny is going to win a few races in 2025, but I don't think he's going to be a championship contender like he's been for a very, very long time. I really hope Denny can prove me wrong and have a great year, but I don't think Chris Gale and Denny are going to perform great. Some think he's just going to perform just fine. I don't think he's going to do great. But as for Joe Gibbs Racing itself, Chris Gabehart is going to share things a lot and get things turned around over there. And I do believe that you're going to see a really strong and really great season for the program. And I think they will turn it around and will get one of their cars, at least for sure, in the Championship 4 in 2025. Now we're going ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode as we're talking about Martin Truex Jr. Now, over the weekend, there's been a lot of talk and conversation. We already know that Martin Truex Jr. is expected to run the 2025 Daytona 500, which could be his first and only Cup Series start of 2025, as Martin Truex Jr., of course, will retire from full-time racing and will not be back full-time in 2025. We do know he is going to run some select NASCAR Xfinity Series races in the 2025 season. But one race we've been expecting that Martin Truex Jr. was going to run in 2025, like I said, was the Daytona 500. And we all had assumed that it was going to be with 2311 Racing. However, it was confirmed this past weekend on Friday that Martin Truex Jr. will not run the Daytona 500 with 2311 Racing in 2025. However, he does note that they are still planning for this to happen. It still is a little bit up in the air now, but it still sounds like Martin Truex Jr. is going to run Daytona 500, even if it's not with 2311 Racing. Well, I think a lot of people are disappointed here that it's not going to be with 2311 Racing. I am not really shocked about this. When we started hearing the lawsuit stuff and the fact that 2311 may have 3 open entries run the Daytona 500, I thought it was going to be very unlikely they were going to run a 4th car for Martin Truex Jr. So we got to go back to the drawing board. What teams could Martin Truex Jr. run for? Because now, remember, they can't run a 5th car at all. Joe Gibbs Racing, they can prepare the car, but they cannot run a 5th car, even if it's an open car. So Joe Gibbs Racing, while they're going to be preparing it, he can't run in a 5th full car run by Joe Gibbs Racing. There's only one current Cup team that really comes to mind, and that is Legacy Motor Club. Legacy Motor Club is going to run a 3rd car for sure, at least part-time in 2025. We know Jimmy Johnson is expected to run select races in the 2025 season. My theory is that Jimmy Johnson is potentially going to give up his seat for the Daytona 500 to give the ride to Martin Truex Jr., but Joe Gibbs is going to prepare that car so that Martin is going to have a chance and opportunity to be very, very competitive. Because one of the races that's been on Martin Truex Jr.'s bucket list to get a victory at is the Daytona 500. The closest Martin came to winning the Daytona 500 was in 2016, where he lost by 10 1,000ths of a second and 1 100th of a second to Denny Hamlin. He wants to basically get the chance to run the Daytona 500 once again to have that chance to win the Daytona 500. Now, Legacy Motor Club, it is no secret, they have struggled with super speedways. And if he's in an open car, he's probably going to have to race his way in. And one thing I worry about when it comes to Martin Truex Jr., he is not the best super speedway racer in the Cup Series, which is kind of crazy to think about considering how great he was with DEI in the NASCAR Xfinity Series back in the day. But I think that's the most likely team that he could go with. Or there could be some other options. Some have thrown out Gaunt Brothers. The Gaunt Brothers have not been in NASCAR since 2021 when they ran part-time. They were going to run, of course, a next-gen car in 2022, but I don't know if that's going to be possible. The other team I've seen people bring up is Sam Hunt Racing. I think Sam Hunt Racing is flirted with potentially moving up to the NASCAR Cup Series in the past, and I certainly think Sam Hunt Racing could be another really, really good option for Truex Jr. if it does end up becoming available. If they do want to move up and do a one-off, that could certainly be an option. I think Sam Hunt Racing, especially with the support they get from TRD, I could certainly see that being a major, major possibility for sure. But I think it's still kind of unknown at this point if that is going to happen. If Martin is going to run the Daytona 500, I think it will be with Legacy Motor Club most likely at this point. I think because of the litigation going on and the lawsuit stuff, I think that, like I said, is a major, major reason why you're not going to see Truex Jr., of course, run the other events and run the Daytona 500 with 2311, which, again, is a really big shame because I think a lot of us really want to see Truex Jr. get the chance and opportunity to run with the most competitive organization, especially now with the fact that you've got 2311 getting Riley Herbst, who is one of the best super speed racers in the field to this day. I think a lot of us would really, really like to see that happen with him running with 2311. But I think the positive news that comes out of this is at least Truex Jr. is not giving up on the opportunity to run the Daytona 500, and he's still planning as of now to run the Daytona 500 at this time, which I hope he can be very, very competitive because I could see Truex Jr. having a shot with a good team, but I don't think Martin will be super competitive with Legacy to get it done. But I'm glad to see that Martin isn't going away from the sport as a whole, but it is a shame to see that Martin will not be running the Daytona 500 with Legacy. I wish that was the case. He was, with 2311, I should say. I wish it was the case that he got to run the Daytona 500 with 2311, be teammates of Bubba and Tyler, but at the same token, at the same time, that is not going to be happening, unfortunately, for this year, which is a really big shame to see. So, that is going to be today's long NASCAR news and motorsports news episode. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Links description below that, and comment your thoughts below on today's episode. What team think Truex Jr. is going to run for in the Daytona 500? Let me know it in the comments below. And do you think Denny Hamlin is going to struggle in 2025? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. There will not be any more videos dropping today on the channel. Tomorrow you're going to see first look at the Daytona 500 intros, an updated look at that. Then on Wednesday we'll have a NASCAR news video discussing news over the course of the last couple days, and if any major news breaks, we'll discuss it here live. And then on Thursday will be the Q&A for Thanksgiving. Friday we'll have some special content dropping. You guys will see. We'll have Xfinity predictions potentially dropping this weekend, and we'll have some other great content dropping very, very soon that I cannot wait for you guys to check out coming up in the next couple of weeks, including some team previews coming out very, very soon. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for Junior Motorsports, Carl Edwards, Kurt Busch, Shane Van Gisbergen, Haley Dean, all that kind of stuff coming soon. You'll see that here on the channel very soon. So I'll see you guys for that. Take care, everybody.